Hello and welcome to another video here on my channel. My name is Gemma. If you're new here, welcome. It's so lovely to meet you. Thank you for stopping by. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. It's great to have so many of you here with me week on week and joining in with the comments and all the shenanigans that I get up to. I took last week off from my regular podcast because I have been enjoying some family time, some much needed and appreciated family time. My husband's on annual leave and so we're making the most of that. So I've got some beautiful scenery to share with you again this week. This week's walks are Holden Forest, which has a Go Ape and a Gruffalo trail, and it's part of Forestry England. It's one of Forestry England's forests, but the real beauty that I can't wait to share with you is Bellever Forest in the heart of Dartmoor National Park. It's a stunning forest made up primarily of Sitka spruce, and you'll see lots of those, although there are plans in the forest future to encourage a wider range of species, including more broadleaf trees as well. My husband is doing a master's in forestry. I say forestry, it's something vaguely more complicated than that. So yeah, we really enjoy our outdoor time. So the scenery that you will be seeing during this week's video is all about that. I have got a bumper episode for you this week. I'm certain I'm going to forget at least something, but that doesn't matter. I can hold that till next time if I do. So we've got knitting, we've got crochet, we've got sewing, we've got quilting, we have got baking, and as I said, the beautiful walks as well. I'm going to start with sewing this week because I have made great strides in my son's pyjamas. I've done a fair bit, but we've been focusing on the garden and other things like that as well. And I also only really use nap times to sew at the moment. I don't use the evenings because I prefer the natural light during the day, although that's going to have to change because the evenings are drawing in and I am going back to work during the day very shortly. But I wanted to just get a little bit of this sewing project done, and they're almost finished. My son's pyjamas are almost finished. I'm so very excited to share them with you. The first big thing that's happened is my pyjama top has sleeves. It was a little bit of a mare, if I'm honest, to put these sleeves in. I even googled Sew Over It's tutorials about setting in sleeves, but the construction for the pattern for the tutorial is different to the construction for this pattern for the pyjamas, so I had to kind of grin and bear it. There was a fair bit of frustration. There were even some tears, to be honest, because I was being outwitted by a piece of fabric. But I persevered and I got there, and I'm so proud. As we said before, I'm a novice sewist, so this is my first time sewing a shirt, a pyjama shirt, or any kind of shirt really. And I'm just so thrilled with the result. It's a little bit wonky, but show me someone or something that isn't wonky these days. The Leaning Tower of Pisa is wonky and everyone thinks that's great, so you know. So here we are, here's the jacket. As I shared, I had a real pig's ear of sewing in the pyjama sleeves. I found it incredibly awkward. And actually, if we take a close look underneath, you can see the seams don't quite align as I would like them to. I don't know how well you can see that there. They kind of cross like a wonky hot cross button. I've hemmed one sleeve, and that's a good 4 centimeters of fabric has gone up, and the other sleeve is pinned ready to hem. Other than that, on the jacket, I still have to hem the jacket itself and pop the buttonholes in and sew the buttons. Now, I have done buttonholes before on my sewing machine. I will need to remind myself of how to do them, but at least I know I've done that before, and that's something I'm confident in tackling. So yeah, the sleeves, I found them very awkward to fit in. I struggled with the pictures to work out the angles of the sleeves, how they were being set in, how much the overlap was, how far I should sew, whether I should sew up until where the pieces of fabric met, if I should sew beyond. And one sleeve ended up having to be put back in because it had an hole in it, a hole that you didn't really want because it was nothing to do with putting your hands through the arms, but there we are. However, I'm really pleased. And then that afternoon as well, I couldn't be bothered to go and get the ironing board out. There you go. It's a really real podcast for you. So I decided instead to sew the trousers together. And again, this is something I've done before. I have made all the mistakes. I sewed the ankle of one part to the butt of the other part, and then I managed to sew it into a skirt. I made every mistake you could possibly make. So I was quietly confident about this one, about joining the leg seams together and then slotting one trouser leg inside the other so that you can sew the gusset, for once, for better expression. It's not the gusset because there isn't a gusset here, but yeah. I then got confused as to which was the front and which was the back, so I reinforced the front instead of the back. But now both are reinforced because I wasn't going to pick it out, and frankly a bit more enforcement isn't a problem. I've yet to hem the trousers, as you can see, and look like they've got an incredibly long body here, so that'll come up to his chest, because that's the crotch there, and it would come up to his chest. But so once I haven't pressed this in place yet, but once I've turned it under and turned it under again with the elastic, you can see the distance to the crotch is much less, and they look incredibly wide, but again the elastic will draw it in. So in theory they shouldn't be too tricky to do. I'm so close to having them done, and I'm really excited to start pinning the fabric for the next pair. I have some Thomas the Tank Engine fabric, and my plan is to make him some more for his birthday, which is the beginning of November, so I've got a little bit of time. Now, the thing I'm really proud of here, I don't know if you remember, in my yarn shop tour from last week, I know not everybody watches those, and that's totally fine, so if you didn't, one of the yarn shops I went to was Pins and Needles in Devizes, and I got chatting to a lot of their regulars because we were there for an event, and we were talking about sewing. It came up because you never have one hobby, do you? You have multiple hobbies and you try multiple crafts quite often. I know some people stick to one thing, and I admire that level of commitment, frankly. I don't possess it. But she said to me about French seams, and I thought, do you know what? I'm going to give those a go on my son's trouser legs. Now, what I didn't do was measure precisely. I just tucked in a little bit. And with French seams, I think I've taken some video. So you put the wrong sides together, so you almost feel like you're seaming them incorrectly, because when you do your stitches down, you end up with your raw edge on the outside. But then when you turn it back in and fold it over to do the seam, that kind of raw edge on the outside gets caught inside. And what you're left with is this rather charming little seam with no nasty itchy raw edges, because they're all tucked in there. Isn't that clever? I didn't do it terribly accurately. I didn't do lots of measuring and lots of sorting out. but I kind of eyeballed it and thought done is better than perfect, which is basically my attitude this week. Done is better than perfect. And yeah, I'm really pleased with how they've worked out. So again, very little left to do on these. It's literally the putting in of the elastic and hemming the trouser legs, and then they're done. I'm just so proud of how far I've come with sewing. I've only been working on these this summer holiday, really, I think. So it does feel really good, and obviously with very limited time. And I think now I know what I'm doing, I could probably cut out another one and get it sewn mostly in a session. And I'm hoping that my confidence improves so that I do sew a little bit in the evenings, where just by artificial light. I used to sew by artificial light when I was making project bags for my business, but I just think that because this is something so new, I've actually found it quite tricky and a little bit scary. And I know that sounds very silly, to be scared of some pieces of fabric. My next little bit of sewing is some pretty terrible machine quilting. I promised myself, if you've been here before, I promised myself that I would move on from the pyjamas when I ran out of orange thread on the bobbin and I could rewind the bobbin for my hot water bottle cover project. So I finished the thread on that bobbin. I've actually got about that much sleeve to hem on one of the arms. And I dutifully wound up the cream thread for the hot water bottle cover. And I thought, right, now all I need to do is put it together. This will be fine. And then I was reading the instructions. Now the hot water bottle cover pattern that I'm using is from So Sweet Violet, who is So Sweet Violet on Instagram and here on YouTube. She has her podcast, Jules Journals, and she has a lovely shop that sells all sorts of beautiful things. But she has this pattern for this hot water bottle cover, and this is what I took on before Christmas last year, but who's counting the days? Anyway, I was reading the pattern again because I'm learning to read patterns very, very carefully, and I thought, oh crumbs, I meant to have quilted the back as well. And I thought, oh, how am I going to do this? I don't really want to do this by hand because I'll be here for 6 million years. I didn't have a fabric pen handy, and I didn't have any hexes to quilt around, so there were no guides. So I thought, I know, I'm going to do a grid. I'm just going to do an ordinary grid, just like Jules says she does on hers. And I think hers were 2 inches by 2 inches, whereas I've gone more like 2 centimetres by 2 centimetres. And I didn't have a fabric pen to hand. And I went with this approach of done is better than perfect. And I kind of wish I'd done this with a blue thread now. That's the only thing I wish I'd done differently. And so I started off by trying to measure against the guidelines on the sewing machine where I should be quilting. And then when it came to the next one, obviously then you're covering it up. So I thought, it's about my finger width from the machine foot. So if I keep my finger here and don't let it creep forward at all so that it gets whacked by the needle, not the needle itself, obviously that's within the foot, but the thing that holds the needle in place, that really hurts when it thunders up and down and you catch your finger under it. So I thought I won't do that, won't let that happen, and that will do. And it was going a bit wonky, and then I struck upon absolute genius. You're going to be so impressed with this. Washi tape. I thought in the absence of fabric pen, I should use washi tape and mark it out, which again was great until the washi tape stopped sticking to the linen fabric that I was using. So in the end, I eyeballed it. It's handmade. And so here is my very wonky grid quilting. It took me about an hour to do. As you can see, it's not perfect. There are puckers in the fabric, etc. But it is nevertheless quilted. And I don't think, considering I was eyeballing it a lot of the time, it's too awful. I'm going to go with charming. I think it's charming in its naivety. It's naivete. It's very naive sewing. How about that? I just wanted it done so I could put the blasted thing together. So this is the backing fabric I chose, this beautiful blue, which I think does go nicely with the roses fabric I've got for the front. So my next step is to put those two pieces together. I'm going to move on a little bit now to baking, because I've done a couple of bits of baking this week that I'd like to share with you. The first one was making cider cake, which is one recipe from the traditional Devon recipes book that I shared with you a couple of weeks ago. We had my in-laws over for dinner a couple of Fridays ago, and my husband had chosen the cider cake as the recipe he'd like me to try from this book, and I thought, well, let's go for it, let's try. So the recipe, it's interesting, it's quite dense, and it calls for half a pint of strong Devon cider. I wasn't sure if this was strong in flavour, strong in alcoholic volume, not sure. So I thought, well, at least I've got everything else in the cupboard. It's just a case of buying a bottle of cider. So economically, that's fine. And so I decided to have a go at making it. Ironically, when I went to Sainsbury's near us, which is obviously in Devon, I could not find any Devonian cider. No Devonshire cider at all. So I ended up with Cornish cider and cider from Somerset, which were quite strong. The cake itself looked fine, but it was incredibly dense when you cut into it. The flavour was really interesting. It was, you could taste the cider. You could taste there was something, I was going to say not quite right with it, but it's something a bit different. And the actual texture, the crumb was really, really close and really, really dense. It almost looked raw inside. It wasn't. It had been cooked plenty. And yeah, I found the recipe easy to follow. The verdict on the cake, and I did make it dairy free as well, because my mother-in-law's dairy free, and I am too now. There we are. There's a turn up for the books. The verdict was positive. We had it with some dairy-free cream, which I felt just helped cut through the stodge of this cake. Yeah, as far as recipes go, I did find it quite dense and quite stodgy, in the same way as you might get a really dense tea loaf sometimes, or something wet like a banana loaf tends to have that really close crumb texture and be quite stodgy. And I did find that the addition of the cream cut through it nicely. Would I make it again? Not in a hurry. Would I make it again if requested by my family? Yes. Is it likely to be requested? Also, yes. So there we go. That's my first experience with that book. The other thing I did was experiment with rocky road cakes for my son, because he wanted to eat the cake that I was making, and although we cook the cider cake, it doesn't cook all the alcohol off, so it's not suitable for children. So I had some ingredients, some cherries, marshmallows, chocolate chips, and made Rocky Road cakes for him as well. He wasn't really into baking with me this week. He didn't really fancy it. He wanted to go and watch TV, and that was fine. We had a bit of an accident with these cakes. Yeah, he wanted some chocolate chips, and I said, okay, fine. So I gave him half a dozen of these little chocolate chips in a bowl, sent him back off to the living room to watch TV while I finished making these cakes, getting them in the oven and prepping dinner. So I think, what was I making? A lasagna? I think I was making lasagna. So there was lots of prep to do. And he was quite happy watching TV. Suddenly, I hear this wail of despair coming from the living room. And I thought, oh my goodness, what's happened? I didn't hear a thud. I didn't hear a crash. How has he hurt himself? What's he done? And I come into the living room and find my son, my two and 3/4, let's say, the 3/4 is important, stood in the middle of the living room, sobbing, looking utterly distraught. And he said, it's got me. What's got you? What's got you? And I suddenly had a flash of, oh, I think I know what's happened here. But I still asked the question, almost with like closed eyes, not really wanting to believe it. I said, what's got you? It's got my nose. And I looked at him and I said, Robin, do you have a chocolate chip up your nose? Yes. I was like, oh my goodness. Okay, all right then, come on. And I thought, gosh, that's going to be really painful, because anything up your nose is painful. And I was grateful it wasn't like a metal toy like in an episode of House. And I called for my husband. I said, he's got a chocolate chip up his nose. And my husband came rushing down the stairs with tweezers and a flashlight. Because of course, in that moment, we were both fairly calm, because Robin was upset and, we just have to deal with this. But common sense left us completely. And it didn't occur to me that the body temperature of my son would be melting this chocolate. So ultimately it'd be absolutely fine. And I said, look, come here. I'm going to cover your mouth. And I want you to blow as hard as you possibly can, thinking it might, dislodge the chocolate chip and we might be able to get it out. So I covered his mouth and he blew as hard as he could. And bear in mind, he's not successfully blown his nose yet, because actually it's quite a hard thing to teach children to do. Everyone thinks, oh, it's actually really hard to teach them just blow through their nose. Anyway, he blew, and like some sort of cartoon, I found myself absolutely covered in chocolate snot. I know that doesn't sound very nice at all, does it? It doesn't. I'm sorry, it doesn't sound very genteel, but it's the truth. It's what happened. And then I said, go on, do it. I thought, I'm covered, in for a penny, in for a pound. Do it again, Robert, do it again. And he's like, I said, is that better? He said, that's better. And Daddy came running down the stairs at that point with his tweezers ready to pry it, and he went, oh. And I said, Mama's got it. And I was crying with laughter at this point, because the whole thing was so utterly ridiculous. And then I said, look, go with Daddy, he'll clean you up, because Mama needs to get cleaned up now as well. And I said, Daddy, look at those chocolate boogers he's covered in. And then as we're going up the stairs, they're going up the stairs, I suddenly hear my husband go, no, Robin, it's chocolate, but don't eat it. Don't eat this chocolate. So the Rocky Road cakes were quite eventful, but not for any reason you might expect. But there we are. They were very, very gooey. They were very yummy. They took forever to cook, because the marshmallows just seemed to make everything extra goopy. But they were a hit. The final bit of baking I did was for my husband's great uncle's birthday. It was his birthday last Friday, and we went to visit. My son coloured him in a hedgehog birthday card, because he has a hedgehog in his back garden that he looks after, and he's set up cameras to watch it. It's really cool. It's watching this little tiggy-winkle snuffling about. And I didn't want to go empty-handed, but we are on a tight budget. There isn't a budget to buy everybody birthday presents, and I wouldn't know what to get him in the first place anyway, because, he's quite a quiet and reserved man. He's in his 80s. I don't really know an awful lot about him still, but we wanted to mark it, and obviously my son absolutely adores him. And so I thought, I'll make some shortbread. And I got out my shortbread mould, which is from Lakeland. It's stoneware, which makes me go a little bit. And and made some shortbread. And to my amazement, it turns out that shortbread is great-great-uncle's all-time favourite in the whole wide world. And he was so excited. He didn't mind at all that there was this slightly underbaked, crumbly, wonky petticoat tails all disintegrating in this bag that I'd produced for him. He was just very excited to receive it. And then I made it again. I made it again the next morning for my in-laws to come over and play board games with my son, because he's into games now, which is really exciting. It's so much fun when you get to do that. He's got this game called, you know, have you ever come across Kaplunk? You have a tube with a door, like an opening in one side of it, and you twist the tube around basically to face different players, and whoever it's facing it's their turn. And then above the tube you have kind of dome, and the dome has lots and lots and lots of holes in, and then you have these skewers, plastic skewers, that you shove in from one side to the other, crisscross, 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 and then you put marbles on top of that. And the game then is you take it in turns to remove a skewer, twisting the door so it faces you and it's your turn. And the idea is you have as few marbles as possible at the end. It's called Kaplunk. It's quite onomatopoetic. And so what Robin chose in the charity shop was essentially a chicken and egg version of this. So it's a chicken, and instead, and the skewers have plastic feathers on the end, so it feels a bit cruel actually. It's like you're plucking this chicken's feathers anyway. And inside, instead of marbles, you've got little plastic eggs. And Robin was in raptures over this game, and on Saturday morning, got it on Friday, Saturday morning he wanted Lolly and Popper to come round and play his chicken game, and to his delight they accepted the invitation, so I rustled up some shortbread. Yeah, so it's been quite a nice baking sort of day, really, sort of week. If we skedaddle back now to Fibercrafts, I have some progress. I'm not sure what I'd call this, but I have pommed. I have successfully pommed. And if you've been here a while, you know that pom-poms are my nemesis. I cannot make pom-poms. I disintegrate and terrible things happen to my pom-poms. But there we are. I have made the pom-pom to go on top of Miss Layla's hat for Christmas, so I'm very, very proud. I haven't attached it yet. I've done some trimming, but I think there's the odd bit that could do with just trimming in, but I was a little bit worried that I would over trim it, ended up with a pom rather than a pom-pom. And with the hat, it definitely needs to be a pom-pom rather than a pom. So yeah, I'm really proud of that. So before I cut it anymore and it all disintegrates, I just wanted to share it with you, because I'm really, really proud of my pom-pom, and I'm just waving my pom-pom at you, which is a perfectly normal thing to do, right? The other thing I've been doing this week, this last week, is I've wanted to focus on getting my long languishing works in progress out. There's so much I want to make. I'm so inspired. I'm really enjoying my sewing. I want to spend time sewing. I want to finish my son's cross stitch. I've got these beautiful books from Search Press, because I'm a Search Press rep, which means I get samples of all the books that come out. And there are so many things in these books I want to make, but I can't make them with as many extant projects as I've got. I need to get some of those things cleared and out the way to free me up creatively to make all the things that I want to make. There's a combination of things. There's works in progress that have been around for quite a while, and have deadlines or have missed deadlines or whatever, and they're in progress. There's actually some work that has been done to them, in lots of cases quite a bit of work. And there are others that are whips in waiting. So I know they know what they want to be. In my head, I've promised them to people, even not necessarily verbally promised to their faces, but I've got these things lined up. And I haven't yet managed to cast them on. And then I've got all this other stuff as well. Now, the beauty of summer sock camp and spending the summer in a really kind of relaxed mode, just making things that I enjoy and focusing on socks, is I found it really restful, and I found it to be really inspiring. I've kind of got my mojo, my motivation to make all the things. So to do that, I need to clear the deck. So what I was trying to do this week was focus on finishing some works in progress. I did quite well to start with. I made loads of progress on a granny square jumper for the yarn shop I used to work at, which is a sample, until I ran out of yarn. And I'm ridiculous. Because it's one round per colour, I ran out of yarn with like that much to go on the round I'd run out of yarn on. And so what I did, rather than just stopping completely, was I did the next colour as far as I could and the next colour as far as I could until I couldn't do any more. So that went really well. But I started this on Sunday. By Tuesday, I had 2 new cast-ons. Yep. I'm an absolutely hopeless case. So I can't for the life of me think what else I need to share with you. I've got myself into such a pickle. Hello, editing Gemma here. I told you I'd forget something, didn't I? And I don't know how I could have forgotten this little chap, because here is Natty. Natty the gnome. He is my very first Imagined Landscapes gnome. He is part of the Mystery Gnome Along, which has been hosted by Search Press and Sarah Shearer of Imagined Landscapes to celebrate the launch of her very first book. I don't have a copy of the book yet, even though it's landed in some UK yarn shops, so I'm going to have words, because my sample should be here. It's got nothing to do with the fact that I want to start making all the gnomes. And yeah, so it's a 4-week mystery knit along, and I have just got clue 4 to do. It came out on Monday and it's only Thursday, so it's not too bad. Yeah, so here is Natty. I'm using a gnome along kit from Giddy Yarns that I bought at the very first East Anglia Yarn Festival in 2022. I think that's 2022. Yeah. And I'm affectionately calling him my little blueberry at the moment, because he does resemble a fairly portly blueberry with the colours I've chosen. All that's left to do of him, I've seen the final result, are his arms, his nose and his beard, and then he's done. And I don't think, although I only freelance, I'm not technically employed by Search Press, I don't think I can enter the make along. I'll have to check the rules with that one, because I'm a freelance rep. I'm not actually employed by Search Press, if that makes any sense. But yeah, look at that. How sweet is he? So the book, I've got a picture of the book here, I'll put the front cover up for you, is the debut book from Imagined Landscapes. She's known for her gnomes. You guys will know her gnomes. You must know her gnomes. You know the gnomes, right? The Gnome Along every year, every September, is always really popular. And this particular book is unique in that she's designed 8 gnomes for the book, but they're all mix and match, so you can Frankenpiece them together. So Natty is the combination of various hats, bodies, beards and noses, which is really exciting. So you've got a whole range of possibilities for your gnomey adventures. So yeah, that is my gnome. And he'll be a finished object next time. I do have some finished pairs of socks, but I'm not going to go into that now, because Summer Sock Camp actually finishes on Saturday the 31st of August, and so I've got a video coming out on Sunday that I hope you'll join me for, which is my final Summer Sock Camp update for 2024. But I will just flash my box of socks for Summer Sock Camp at you so you can see what I'll be talking about. So I do very much hope you will join me for that one on Sunday the 1st of September. So that's it from me for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the episode. It's been a bit of a bumper one, but it's 2 weeks worth of making basically that I've shared with you. I'm really excited for the next stage. I'm so excited for the cozy autumn weather. I'm going to be spending this weekend getting ready for autumn, and I'll be sharing that with you next week. So I'll be doing my autumn yarn basket, sorting out my knitwear for autumn, and doing some new recipes and batch cooking, all that sort of thing. So I very much hope you will come back and join me for that. I'd love your feedback as ever on the videos. If there's something you're particularly enjoying, then do let me know. And I would also love to know what you're making. Are you excited for autumn? What are you excited to make and do? I love the summer, don't get me wrong. I love being outside. I love the social aspect of it, but I am ready for cozy. I am ready for cozy vibes. And I hope you will join me to start the most wonderful season of the year together next week. Take care. Bye.